Alright guys, so I want to go through a massive GTA 6 leak that goes through a bunch of different stuff for this game, the locations, the 3 different cities that we're going to be playing in, a bunch of other specifics that we hadn't actually seen in other leaks before. This guy goes through some details, apparently a playtester for the game, and he talks about, specifically what the locations are, how they play, some storyline information, the cars, the police system, the HUD, and a bunch of different stuff, allegedly from what he saw from this here. So again, there's a lot of interesting content within this leak. I'll obviously leave a link to this down below. This original leak was actually posted to the subreddit Gaming Leaks and Rumors and has since been deleted, so I'll leave a link down below to where you can see a screenshot and sort of an outline as to what this leak is all about. And again, once I go through the information and really what's going on here, I want to go through a bunch of different things. One, does this information match up with a bunch of the other previous GTA 6 leaks we've been seeing, and also how credible and possible this is to happen? So let's go through here. I want to go straight into the information. So the map. He's saying here, the map is stupendously huge, hence the game's emphasis on air travel. It makes GTA 5 look like a schoolyard playground. There are an array of atmospheric effects that bring out the life in everything. Light pollution, hurricane winds, morning fog. I've never seen an open world game this realistic before. The playable game territory encompasses 2 major cities, Carcer City, which is sort of this dirty East Coast area based in Boston, Massachusetts, and Vice City, based in Miami, Florida. Every individual county is named as well. I can't remember the names right now. I think Scott County was one of them. The game is also divided into 3 states. I spent more time in Carcer because I found it to be a more interesting city. It is, however, easy to get lost in, and there are a lot of roads that are so spirally and don't always follow a classic grid pattern. The satire surrounding some of the historic US landmarks I discovered got a laugh out of me. I've encountered some deviant statues in the Charleston knockoff area. I was told a historic tour would be a side attraction in the game. I also fast traveled via Blue Line train, which took me to the airport area. There's also an abundance of towns, shanties, waterfronts, suburbs, hideouts, and wilderness between the 2 cities, and a military base in the Florida Vice City region where I stole my jet. I did a couple flyovers, but I didn't get to digest the map in its entirety on foot. If you fly up high enough, you get this atmospheric bloom effect. I think Google Earth. The countryside sort of transitions from Massachusetts-esque farmland and seasides. Fishing is a minigame, didn't get to play it. Stretches of red oak forest and freeways treading through fields and towns to marshy grassland and eventually a swampy Florida countryside, not unlike the bayou from Red Dead Redemption 2, just way bigger and less misty. It's a very long and gradual transition between the 2 cities, but it's a little awkward traveling from Boston to Miami without any other major US cities in between, save some small towns. It is still well realized even in an unfinished state. There are also small chunks of islands based in the Keys, dubbed the Chain in GTA 6 World, connected via a long highway based on the 7-mile bridge. The aesthetic of Vice City's area is similar to the Bayou and Guarmo from Red Dead Redemption 2, again think Test Mule. The water effects are on par with Sea of Thieves, just stunning. There is an underwater exploration as well, but I didn't spend too much time below the surface. Overall, the map design is the most authentic yet in a Rockstar game. It doesn't feel as gamey as Red Dead Redemption 2 and GTA 5, where blooms felt compressed next to each other. They really went all out and it shows. I felt very overwhelmed exploring such a huge and richly detailed game world. I can't even remember everything, so many roads and huge spaces. It'll take many long hours to memorize this map without relying on the radar. So before I comment on any of this stuff and the specific lines in which I have some red flags and some lines where I actually could see that happening within GTA 6 and they actually match up with past leaks, and if they would, for example, create a map where the cities would blend together, where he talks about the transition between Carcer City, that East Coast city, into Vice City, that makes sense how that would happen. But when he talks about specific things here, where he mentions the comment, oh, that's the airport where I got the plane. That's stuff that I just don't see as an actual leaker putting within a leak, but who knows? Definitely leave a comment below what you're thinking as I'm reading through these leaks here. But let's go on to his comments on the minigames and story missions here. So he says, I didn't get to play any minigames or story missions. In fact, I don't even think the character I controlled was the actual protagonist. He looked like a generic NPC model, no voiceovers or lines, just an avatar to explore the world and test the game with. That isn't to say the story isn't in the works, it's well into production, that's obvious. I just didn't get to play any of it. I do know that multiple protagonists are a thing. 2 of them might be siblings, one of them is an undercover cop or something, think the Departed movie. Apparently the groundwork for the mission design has been completely revamped. You can permanently abandon some missions or take different routes that sprout different consequences. Each protagonist can manufacture their own story beats, but in the end, the overall story will stay intact, so it's still somewhat linear. Missions are mostly set piece based from what I've told. Again, I didn't actually get to play any of the story missions, but a fellow tester gave me a basic outline of it. Now he goes on to talk about cars and sort of the driving system within this game. So lots of newly modeled cars too. I did spot a couple of OGs. The game sort of has this reboot aesthetic, if it makes sense. A lot of samey qualities that make up a GTA game, but more detailed than ever. I saw a newer looking Lamborghini on Oceanside that I could tell was supposed to be an Infernus, even though it was a different model than the one featured in GTA 4 and 5. I didn't see any returning vehicles from GTA Online expansions. Like I said, all the core vehicle designs seem to be rebooted with the exception of a few vintage cars. Gunplay felt somewhat unfinished when I played it, almost identical to GTA 5's with a clunky cover system. I've been told it's going to get retooled eventually. Running and climbing animations aren't also 100% complete yet, sort of these placeholder animations borrowed from either GTA 5 or Red Dead Redemption 2. Driving feels like GTA 5 in the state I played it. Everything gameplay wise was placeholdery. I'm laughing honestly, these words this guy is using are a bit funny, but anyway. He goes on to say, I've been told the map is the priority right now and the gameplay mechanics are still in the process of being refactored to provide a more immersive experience. Although I was told first person will be included, it wasn't ready or available in the version I played. No radio stations either when I played or ambient tracks. My biggest takeaway was that it was open world. It's insane. I can't understate it enough. The game is absolutely titanic. I can only imagine it in its finished state. I'm not sure what Rockstar's ultimate vision is with the game. Mechanically, it's still very GTA, but technologically, it's a beast. A splendor of modern game design and a Hollywood budget. I don't even want to know how much money they poured into it. This is just him talking. Now he goes on to talk about the HUD. So he says, basic circular radar like in Red Dead Redemption 2 and GTA 4. Seems very beta-ish. Generic stock text fonts for vehicle names and ammo count. Seems like they haven't picked a font yet. Weapon wheel is back with generic black and white placeholder images for the weapons. I was able to use the AK-47, pump shotgun, a Glock, baseball bat, to name a few. He goes on to talk about the police now. This is the final interesting part of this whole little leak here. So police, very robust and tactical AI. Apparently the devs are pushing this new AI trick called paired AI, where teams of adversaries like noose agents or cops can split into teams of 2 to flank the player. They program some sort of buddy trust system for cops to communicate realistically and feel more like a team, something they aimed for but couldn't quite achieve in GTA 5. Didn't really notice any of the police shootouts I had. What I did notice was a team of noose guys cover walking side by side with a slowly rolling SWAT van. Felt straight out of a Hollywood film. Noose can also use riot shields and tear gas via grenade launcher. Police will sometimes open the trunk of their cruiser to pull out an AR or shotgun. Lots of realistic touches like that. 6 stars is also back, then the military spawns in. It takes a while for them to arrive to give the player some prep time. They actually travel from the military base in real time to confront the player. They're very challenging. Once they start using jets, you can also disarm police with certain melee prompts. So I'm not gonna go through a bunch of the other filler stuff. I basically only read you guys the main parts of the leak here. He talks about all this different stuff. He's a QA tester, this and that, and he also went through some backstory as to what he's been doing. He said at the beginning of this leak here, I didn't include it because I wanted to get into the information for you guys, but I'll include it here. He says Red Dead Redemption 2 was a huge project for Rockstar and apparently a ton of morale was lost. The game makers weren't even sure if they were making a game that was fun to play, as the studio heads kept pushing everyone to incorporate all of these state-of-the-art immersive qualities and attention to detail, wildlife and visuals, all of this different stuff. So it looks like, again, and he says here also half of their team went to Red Dead 2 and then also half went to GTA 6, and now obviously, presumably, we don't need the leak to tell us this, but they're all on GTA 6 now. But let me round off this leak here and really go through the points which I think are going to happen that match up with what we've seen before, and then the points that could happen, and then obviously a lot of these filler in between. So the problem here is that the cities sort of do make sense to some extent. I mean, we haven't really had any East Coast leaks. I mean, there sort of have been. Right now, it's mostly the Vice City and then South America sort of sector of the game, the 70s and 80s era in that region, the Gulf of Mexico region. That's mostly where we've been. So Vice City being added here, he could have just thrown in Vice City to just add some sort of credibility, because he knows all of the prior leaks have been concerning Vice City. So although he had all of this different stuff to talk about with this other Carver City location, and there have been stuff about another East Coast city potentially as well in this game, I think for the most part, all the descriptions here as to where he's driving around and the farmland and the transition between the cities, like that transition makes sense, and I could definitely see that happening within GTA 6 if they did a map with an East Coast city and then also Vice City and then also, other islands south of that in the Gulf of Mexico, maybe in Mexico itself, wherever they want to do it. That makes sense, but I think with this leak here, it's way too detailed for that to be true, and especially if he's been playtesting for a couple years now, all of this stuff definitely wouldn't leak out that specific. Maybe the actual city locations, but not as how he was driving around, going to the military base, doing all this stuff. I don't see that happening. The cops, the AI for the cops and police, that's another thing which I definitely, is very possible within the game, and there could be leaks concerning like, oh, they're revamping the AI for the police. But I think specifically there, I don't know if he himself went into that game and played and saw for himself, oh, this is the new police AI. I do think generally all of that stuff there could be a leak that was leaked out in a different form, not through the playtester, but maybe just through different leaks in files that came out through the game, or just different notes from people that were in the studio that just leaked it out by word of mouth, but not necessarily a playtester leaking all of this stuff. So I think in the end, this most likely is fake, but I don't want to completely say. I saw a lot of people just saying off the bat, oh, I'm not going to read any of this. None of this makes sense. I mean, a lot of it actually makes sense. A lot of what he's saying here isn't too insane, and it's not like he's doing this crazy, wish list for the game. This is stuff that is very possible for the game, and all of this stuff generally is on track with what we've been saying for GTA 6. So I think this is a pretty solid thing here to look at, but overall, if you're looking at this for 100% confirmed information, you're definitely not going to get that. So that's my final point here with this leak. Definitely let me know what you guys think about this down below. See you guys later.